think it's about that time to jump into today's topic, which is on road trips and roadmaps. It is a truly an Ask Me Anything. It doesn't have to be limited to roadmaps, but that is our theme. So ideally, roadmap or road trip questions. And what kind of inspired this for me just to wax on a soapbox for a minute, kind of Steve's earlier points on roadmaps and Luke's as well, was kind of thinking we're going into summer, right? And what says summer to any of you guys? I don't know. For me, it was, growing up, the great iconic American road trip, right? I grew up in a family of many kids, and we usually took one family vacation if we were lucky a year, and it was always going to be a road trip. Even if we were going to visit grandparents, we lived in Texas, they lived up north, Ohio, New York. It was a road trip because you're not getting 4 or 5 kids on a plane, for less than $1 million. So, and all the hassle that involved even before TSA, right? So, and yes, I was definitely long before TSA got involved in that whole thing. But anyway, so you got all in the car. And so there's a whole aspect of planning out this road trip. And when I was thinking about that and what used to go into that, it was very much for me it's the same thing as planning out, in many ways it correlates, right, to planning out a roadmap. You got to first, the biggest part, right, you got to decide on a destination. Where are you trying to go? And then somewhere along the way, you got to choose a route. Think about your vehicle. How are you going to get there? You may decide your vehicle needs things, a tune-up. It's not the appropriate vehicle. You're going to rent a car. So it's very much, as we as product managers sit there and try to figure out, the vision, the product strategy. Where are we going? How are we going to get there? With who? Do we need things along the way? Plan for stops, right? You're planning those releases, and you may even plan like stops, like breaks, for holidays or what months, have a lot of things that will impact the team and change our velocity and things like that, right? And then, most importantly, bring entertainment. That's really what I'm here for every day, right? What I bring. So that was kind of what was in my mind. If you're wondering, like, how did we combine these concepts, right? But I wanted to bring that to the table, just kind of say that, and then open it up to the group for discussion. So I'm going to stop sharing here and just let us focus on the discussion.
Hey, Hallie, it's Rakesh. So I can resonate with that because I've done like a week with my family in Europe, and it was trains, right? So we interrailed, and it was train trips all around. So we got the major hotel stays and that, but inside we were like just exploring and stuff like that. And the bit that you said about breaks really resonate, right? Of planning breaks to release something, watch it flourish, and then do the next thing. Because even as product managers, when you think about how we kind of go put things feature, sometimes it kind of gets muddled, and it's really hard to see the metrics behind it and to see the observations. So again, those planned breaks of kind of just watching things and see how they kind of form and how they come alive is probably really important as a product manager, which is one of the things that kind of resonate in both worlds, from the trip of taking 2 kids on a trip and like no planned breaks and like, someone's burning out at this point, to like, hey, we've seen your products, like, hey, this isn't exactly how I meant it to be consumed. And then, obviously iterating on that as you go forward. So
I love it. No, yeah, that's a great point. And I appreciate that. I think it's something I've often, debated almost mentally with myself, with that need for those breaks, right? Like even formally in your product management cycle, because like you said, go feature, release, right? And it's like, where does your team get to just, breathe, right? In between those things, I do try to, think about that, because you watch otherwise burnout happen, right? Both your product team and your development team, especially, I think, because they're the one that constantly just is like the conveyor belt. You watch them with like Lucy and Ethel with the chocolates coming, right? And here's, if we're doing really good as product managers, we just keep the ingredients or whatever went into making those chocolates upstream, right? Just crank it along. And there's them that's like, oh my God.
I want to talk a little bit about the planning part, right? Like,
hey,
hi, good morning. So I like about planning my trips, right? I always plan my trips. Certain people are not, right? They want to just sit in the car and then decide the destination. There are 2 types of passengers. Like, there are people, they want to do road trip, but they don't know where they want to go, right? So they kind of have an idea. So it could derail the same way, right? Like planners who know the destination, and who set their goals. Okay, this is what the organization is achieving for. Have a defined path, and then you can define timeline. It's easier that way. You know what's coming ahead. You prepare for the worst things that might come and slam us in the middle. So you can do that. People who don't plan, right? Like who sit in the car and try to decide where do I want to go, right? Like aimless drivers, aimless road trippers are the ones who doesn't know what roadmap, where it needs to lead to, go all over. Yeah, they have their own journey, but it may not look like a pretty journey, like a defined roadmap. So they can take exits.
I like that.
Decide which exit they are going to take, things like that. So I always say, like, that is the difference between having a defined roadmap and not having a roadmap, and then starting it like, okay, I know I need to work on this, and then you work on it, and all of a sudden something comes, you stop this, right? And then you go divert to the other one. So things happen like that. That's where I always say, like, try to say no as much as possible. If you have a roadmap, try to stick to it. Make sure you reason with people when they come with a new feature, saying, okay, yes, I understand the feature is good for us, but why I have a roadmap? Like, try to say the no part, and then try to reason with why you are saying no to the new feature. So I see that a lot, like in organizations, when I go join, like in the new places, and they're like, oh, we have a roadmap for this quarter. I'm like, what happened to the rest of the year? They're like, oh, no, we don't have it. Like, we do the roadmaps as and when it happens, right? Things like that. So I always tell them, no, you have a goal for a year, and then you can change course. Sometimes happens, like you change course because something happens with your car. You have to stall for some time, but always be prepared. Know where you are going, know where you are headed, like don't know your end goal, right? I always try to say that. So that's what that came to my mind when you said road trip. I'm like,
I love it, and thank you. And I just want to jump in. You said a couple of really, really great things there, and it made me think actually of driving home yesterday. And if it wouldn't have been the exact epitome of distracted driving, I wish I could have videoed this guy that was just like all across 285. And like, that's an example of what you said. The people that are in the car didn't know where they were trying to go, and then they suddenly decide, right? And it's like, oh, there's my exit, right? And so they're trying to get over 5 lanes, suddenly for no reason, and hopefully not take down the entire highway with them.
She hit on something exactly right. Great, that's the roadmap for the quarter. I've heard people talk about the roadmap for the next 2 sprints. That's it. And you're going, what? And the way I used to figure out where I'm used to being at small to medium-sized software companies. And typically I'll go out on sales calls, or I go to conferences or shows, or go visit with past customers to find out why they left us. And, sometimes that gives you that chance to go out and take a walk in the wild and really cut through all the garbage. Because when you're back in the office, or even you're on your Zoom call, you're all feeding each other. But the reality is out there, and you've got to have time to break away. So you kind of need to lay down the next quarter and say, go execute on that. I need to go off and really go peek and see what's happening. And I know more and more, a lot of people are saying, no, we'll throw all the things in there. You just prioritize them and get them into the queue and get them out. It's like, come on, man, that's not being a product manager. That's being a project manager.
Right, exactly.
And having some project management skills and doing that is an important thing. And we need to all know how to do it. But if you really want to build and make and satisfy and improve and bring some joy out there to your customer base and your investors, you've got to have time to stop. I think you guys said take a breath. You've got to stop and take a breath and say, you know what? I'm just going to go take a walk around the block. I'm not sure what I'm going to see, but I know that customer A is there and B is there and C is there. And I'm just going to stop in and say, what do you got? And I may not even ask them about my product. I might say, what are you guys doing right now? And you might learn about a complete new problem that you didn't even know existed.
I love what you just said about Goob. I'm just going to jump in and say that, and then to finish, where I was going with mine was the timing, right? So many, you hit on this with the, just a couple months out, and Steve, you just reiterated it really well, right? Where people are sometimes talking in these short time frames, and that's okay. But that's when it's super refined, right? Like in my mind, you should have your 18-month to even like 3-5 year roadmap, right? You should have some idea of where you want to go, to that point of like planning out, but it gets more real. The closer it gets, the more crisp it is, right? The more locked down, or whatever words it should be, right? This is really the plan. The further out plan, it's a plan until things change, right? I think is what we're.
There is also a misnomer about like kind of like a thought process about, oh, if you go tell the development team what we are doing for the entire area, they're going super confused. Just give them what they need to know for this time frame. No, not really. Like you can tell them a higher level roadmap. You don't have to tell them how they need to do it, right? So just give them a higher level roadmap plan, right? The transparency actually helps. The transparency, if you sell what your idea to your own team, they take ownership of what they are doing.
Well, and you know what? It could lead to less technical debt because they know they're building to something over here, not just here. So they're already thinking, okay, I'll make that, but I know that these things are potentially coming. So I'm going to take some consideration in hand and build it maybe a little bit different architecture, a different way.
Yep.
You know what I was thinking, that it speaks back to the flexibility point that you made earlier when you were giving the reference of your father saying, no, you can't go to the bathroom until, we get to this point, right? I mean, you've got to have some flexibility. You've got to keep that in there. But I was curious what everybody, we've touched on it a little bit, but what about the communication piece of it back to your sales and ops teams and other people that need to know, how far do you, because I know that's a philosophy for a lot of people, on how much do you share?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Before we jump there, Lisa, though, I do want to kick it to Tiago and Devin have had their hands up for a minute, and now we got Amit. So Tiago, you're first. Why don't you take that and jump in? Sorry.
Okay, maybe I can plug with Lisa's question. And quick disclaimer, I already have my mushroom coffee for the morning, so I'm ready for some hot takes here. And
fungus coffee. All right, take it away, fun guy.
Yeah, no, I think what a constant misconception is to differentiate between a product roadmap and a product plan. I don't think in general we do a good job at that. I think when we talk about the roadmap, we talk about the mission at hand. What is the ultimate goal, the ultimate outcome, right? So, and the plan is really how to get there. So let's get to the trip example, right? To travel. If I want to go from one place to another, I have many options. I can bike to that place, or I can take my car. I can go my car, or I can take a plane. So these are all the options. That's how you're going to plan to get there. And the pivots that you have along the way are based on the constraints that you face. Well, I don't have enough money to travel by plane, so I'll probably, fill up the tank to get to my destination and make some stops during my journey. So that's so I think that sometimes when we talk about roadmaps and we start talking about the quarter or the sprint, we're not talking about the product roadmap, we're talking about the product plan, right? And I think that this clear differentiate, we all come, most of us come from the waterfall era, right? Where we have those stage gates and you have to have everything pretty well laid out before you can move to the next stage. And then we got into agility, where we have this more fluid, right, state where things are just going as we develop it. And I think that helped us in a lot of ways, but also it helped us lose focus. And I think to me, that's the most important thing when we talk about roadmaps is when I'm talking about a roadmap, I'm talking at least about a fiscal year, right? Or a calendar year, depending on where you are, where these are the outcomes that we are focusing on. And anything that is less than that, to me, that's the product plan, because that's when you're saying, okay, well, my milestones and where I'm going to push the brakes, to reflect on what was done. So this is my take. I think when we talk about roadmaps, we really need to think about the destination, and then we think about the plan. It's really how do we execute and how do we get there? I I still fall victim to it sometimes, and I think most of us, like from some of the comments that I'm hearing, like we still mix up the two topics, and that's sometimes contributes for us to keep this topic, live for longer and longer, because it's a constant source of confusion.
I love it, Tiago. I appreciate that. I resonate with so many things there. We've got a number of awesome folks who have hands up. Devin, I just want to ask you real quick, because I see your hand went down. Did you still want to chime in at anything, or did your comment or question already get addressed?
Oh yeah, I still had a thing. So a lot of good things said here. One of the things, I mean, obviously, been at big organizations where this is, where it's an issue, where there is a roadmap, but things keep coming in there. This executive sponsor over here decides like this is important, and they have a lot of influence in the organization. So, something else gets trumped. A major client of mine, one of the things that they're doing a couple of things that I've been able to leverage their culture and their processes to help them avoid that, which this is the first time I've really seen it work this well, if I'm being honest. So they're doing, as opposed to Agile and Scrum, they're doing Shape Up. I don't know how many of you have heard of Shape Up. 37 Signals. Ryan Singer is sort of the creator of that method. But you have this, you have essentially what is a 6-week development cycle, and then you have a 2-week cool down. And that cool down, a lot of developers there, pretty much everybody there now, because they also have designers, have said it is the best place they've ever worked, because they're not constantly being thrown around by the next wave, the next sprint, essentially. And so they have time to breathe, they have time to think. And even during a product increment, which is what they call their cycles, even during a PI, they are shaping. The product manager is shaping what is coming next. And what I help them do is to take a look at, okay, what is the company's strategic objectives? And we take a supply side and a demand side view of that. So you have what the customer is saying that they want. What are customers saying that they want? And what is the company saying we have to do by a certain time? And we find, how can we align those things so that the executives aren't pushing to do something that customers don't want. And we're also informing executives, hey, we spoke directly to customers at all levels, end users, buyers, et cetera. This is what they're saying. And we get agreement at the executive level, so that when somebody comes and says, hey, we want this feature, we can ask the questions like, hey, okay, it's okay, you want that feature, but you have to understand that what you're asking us to do is to make a trade-off on strategic objectives that have been agreed upon, that we know people want, even people at your own company want. So, do you want us to do this? And understand the trade-off that we're making. Right. And that makes people a little slower to try to derail the roadmap. So I admit it's the first time I've ever seen it work this well. I hope I hope I can use this to help other companies, but it's working. It's working.
That's awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that share. Amit, you've got your hand up. You've been patiently waiting. Sorry, guys.
Thank you. Yeah, all good points there. I think one thing which is slightly different that from the execution and roadmap, and I heard also like a 2 weeks roadmap or a 1 month roadmap. The first thing that comes, like how the roadmap in comes, you have vision, then you have a mission, and from that roadmap comes. And if you have 2 weeks or a 1 month, that means there's no vision or mission. Or if it is there, it's not connected with the execution. So that's the one important piece there. And it looks like
love that.
You're going wherever winds is taking you, or you have clients, like a squeaky wheel gets the grease, that kind of methodology. So yeah, I mean, I think if you have a product and if you want to take somewhere, then I think someone mentioned at least a 1 fiscal year, you should have a roadmap. Of course, things changes, the priority comes and goes, but not having a roadmap, I think that's a very red flag for any org or a product. And I don't know like how you all come up with the roadmap. You have like an OKR, V2 Mom, or any other methodology that you do in a company. I think that's where I think it helps to inculcate like this should be something that we are planning ahead for a year or at least solid for a quarter. So that's definitely actually helps us a lot to have some planning from like and connecting the dots that what you're doing to at least a BU level or GM, or if it's a small company, then of course to the CEO dream. And of course, like one other thing that I said about the methodology different, and I think there was a question on tech that most times what happens in the growing pains of any startup, whenever we are coming up with the product, the entire energy is to the MVP, but not to the north side, north star, what exactly you want to get, and then carve out. And that's where this onboarding issues, tech debt, GTM, or all these things comes up. And I think that's why have from the product perspective, from being a steward there, your product should have a roadmap and how you want to take it. And I think that eliminates all these interruptions that you get. Hey, we need this feature, we need this feature, we did. If you this is what you want or not, and that's actually helps in prioritization. Sometimes I've seen I put a particular feature at number 10 and just coming up with the number, and then you see a lot of customer asking this for because something in requirement discovery or in my interviews I have not given that much thought, but that's the real main issue. Then please make it this number 10 to number 2. So that helps, but it's not always like then you are taking a
Right.
more informed decisions rather than just doing something, you know, just out of somebody's ask.
Yeah. I like it. And I agree. And I'm just going to, jump into to connect us back to the road trip. Like, I think of the things you're hitting on, the things Devin said in the chat, and Greg as well. Thank you, Greg. Hit back on that kind of that, what our, theme was for today, whether it's a cool topic or a joke or what, right? The road trip, right? To the point on the vision, right? Your road trip starts with you're going a place. The vision, the mission is what you're connecting to. Like, we have a place we're going to go. We're going to drive from, Dallas to Buffalo, right? And we, along the way, your big things, it's like, we're going to deliver value for these themes or these capabilities or these, what are your components that are key on the roadmap? Those are your big stops that you're planning, right? There's other things that are going to come up besides just planning in stops like breathers and rests, right? Your things can alter. You might leave a day later on the roadmap than you originally planned when you said you were going to go on this road trip. You might, hit a place where you have to drive slower than you would have liked, whether it's because of construction or because, they drop the speed limit, and, Holly's a bit of a speed demon, but she's not comfortable with going more than like 25 over the speed limit, so there's places where you're going to do that. And then you're going to, I did not say that on a recorded line. If there's any law enforcement, I would never do that. Anyway, there's things that are going to happen.
Is that because it's a super speeder law after over 25?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Actually, fun fact, he's retired, so I think I can say my uncle was a Georgia State patrolman and he taught me to drive. So all of my driving can be blamed on law enforcement. And also, I was taught 15 is the number officially. So if you go under that, you're probably okay. But not in Tifton, Georgia. They're really bored there. 10 is their number. Anyway.
Yeah, not with those cameras anymore. They have those ticket cameras.
Yeah. They're just, as everyone's just trying to ruin the fun. But anywho, so there's the point. There's things that are going to happen. They're going to change the factors that you put into play in the beginning, or that you thought how things were going to play out. To everyone's points here, right? But that key theme that everyone's been hitting on here, I think is so important. It's a road trip, right? You have a roadmap that should be tied to a vision and a strategy, and there's key things that need to be delivered or delivered value to along the way. And the what could change, right? More than a quarter out, I've had roadmaps where I didn't know the what we were going to do, but we're going to do something in this space. And then I love, what Amit hit on the goob, and Steve as well, like getting out of your building, see the customers, and that might change those what's, but you already had a plan, you had a strategy, you had a mission, and you knew you were going to do something in that space or solve that problem. And Manesh, you've been waiting very patiently, Luke as well. So I'm going to kick it to Manesh, and then Luke, you're up next.
I'll try and keep this short, Holly, to use your road trip analogy, to use Rakesh's road trip analogy in Europe, you're using the trains. Why did you go on that trip? You can answer, Holly. Why did you go on those trips?
That's a great question. The recent road trip I took to Italy, I went because my girlfriend told me to.
Right. But
like
you guys went for vacation. You had some type of vision and mission to what Amit was talking about, and that's the significant difference between what I see as a well done roadmap versus the everyone keeps thinking of it of more of a triptych from AAA to show you what you need to do and which turns to make and where to go, and end up using that as a end all be all. But it's really more about what Lisa is trying to get at, which is the communication of what our mission is and how we plan to get there. And we can change that as we go along. But right now, this is the route we're taking. So we're in Atlanta. We're going to California because we want to go to see Yellowstone National Park, right? And we're going to enjoy the outdoors there. That's our goal. That's our intention of where we want to be, what we want to do. How we get there, we could take multiple routes. And that's what the planning is all about. And when somebody says, "Ooh, look at that, let's go stop by there," you can say, well, if we do I don't remember who brought it up, I think it was Devin maybe, that you can now realign them back to what your real goal is of the business and mission.
Does a stop that you want to add? Yes, it's interactive, right? GPS, Google, we can add a stop, but does this stop tied to the mission? How does it, it's going to add a delay, right? Which might be okay, right? But how does it impact our other things, right? If the end goal, to your point, is, my childhood road trips, going to Buffalo because that's where grandparents are. We need to get to grandparents. Is there, something that this helps deliver to? Are we going to pick something up that we're going to take to grandparents? Is this going to, give them more time to brace themselves for the onslaught of children that are about to fall upon them? Whatever, right? Like, so how does it tie into that value? Luke?
I actually want to talk about the product manager role and the product management role in all of this. So when you think about the roadmap and the idea of vision and mission to goals and objectives, there's a key component that can often get overlooked. And I actually think, I can't find it at the moment, but somebody mentioned it in the chat window as well. But my comments around the feedback, the surveys of customers, the conferences, and the market conditions that are happening out there. Product managers' value is not in just being able to pilot the plane or not being able to just drive the car, but it's being able to absorb what you're hearing from the other parts of the organization, what the market is dictating in terms of direction, where you want to differentiate yourself. And bringing that back as a product manager is so critical to helping the business put together a really rock star roadmap that gets everyone excited, but still can tie back to the mission, vision, and goals. And I think that often gets lost because of everything that was said earlier, where product managers can get stuck on release plan, product plan, and just moving features. And so that ability to separate yourself from that, the breaks concept, but just how you get yourself engaged with the sales, the marketing team, the customer engagement is a great way to bring value back to an organization as a product manager, which will tie very directly into where your roadmap goes. So create value through that as a product manager versus just specifically thinking about how do I get the roadmap done once and then execute on it really well.
I love that, Luke. That was really good point.
Hey, if nobody else has raised hands, I would like to take. Okay.
Roadmap.
Road trip analogies, right? Like two things that I want to talk about. One is communication. You can actually, as a head of the family, prepare for a road trip. Like you can say, okay, I'm heading down to Florida or wherever I want to go. If I don't communicate to my family members who's going to be with me on the road trip, or to my friends who are coming along with me on the road trip, they're not going to pack right. right? They are not going to have a swimsuit or something like that. So I always say, when you as a product person or the entire product organization comes up with a roadmap, your primary job is to communicate it to your internal stakeholders, to your sales, to your customer success, to everybody, so that when they come to you with something that doesn't fit into your roadmap, you can remind them saying, remember that roadmap discussion we had? This is not fitting into that piece of puzzle. Do you think you can wait for a later time? Right? Or bring me something that is relevant to the roadmap. I'll be able to fix it quickly because I'm already working on it. So communication, number one, right? The number two is inputs. So when we are preparing for roadmaps, or even at the higher level of mission, vision statement, if you are not getting inputs from your internal stakeholders, right? That is your family members, where do you actually want to go? Right? I can think I'm going to go to Florida. Maybe my kids are so bored of Florida, they don't want to even get into the car. They're like, how many times we will go to Florida? So try to get the inputs even before you start planning. That is, before you have your mission and vision and goals for the organization, talk to your sales. They bring in valid points, because when they bring in a customer who says, you don't have a feature, I'm turning back and going, they know the lost deal value. How much deals we have lost for a particular feature which is not in your product. So take the inputs. We can talk all about, oh my God, sales is coming up with all these unreasonable asks in the middle of the sprint. But remember, they are bringing in our business. They know the market more than we do. If you are not communicating with your salespeople and not knowing about where are the lost deals are going, you're not going to be the leader in the business. So bring in all those requirements from your internal stakeholders. They are your eyes and ears in the market. As a product manager, you can't do everything, right? So get the information from the people who have it. So that's the input part. So that's it.
I see a lot of nods. I know that resonated with a lot of us just there, Sonia. So thank you so much. Just to that point, right? And I was thinking when you were saying that, it's I think too often we fall down the trap of, because they're constantly coming and they're presenting it as, you need to stop and do this right now. Like, they're me telling my dad, I got to go to the bathroom. And he's like, can we pull over on the side of the highway? Can you hang out a window? Like, because we're like, we don't want to slow down, right? We're trying to deliver our roadmap. We've made, commitments, or we have our goals, right? But maybe what they're really asking for, right, or the conversations that needs to be managed is not, that stop right now. It's always, we should always be taking those inputs and then planning them into, does this tie to the roadmap? And if so, where, right? And then we, like Devin and a couple others I saw in the chat, great comments about like interactive. I think Mark proposed originally, like, is it, a printed thing, or is this interactive, like Google Maps or GPS? And so it's like, we can add in the stops, we can plan for this. And so keep the dialogue happening. And our roadmap is always evolving. We can add things, we can change things based on that feedback, because they are a very important input, both sales and our other internal stakeholders. And you want them to see how that happens. And that it's not a static one-way thing, like, oh, we came down like Moses from the mountain, and this is the roadmap, and the roadmap shall be, and this is what thou shalt do and shall not do until the end of time, right? That's not really going to be an effective way to ever manage it. But if you keep that dialogue open, you're going to get that. But you don't have to have that dialogue as a, everyone thinks we're literally squealing on the brakes and sitting on the side of the road until we get that feedback and we hear them out. And every thought is always going to be addressed that way, right? Only my parents' car, because that's what happens when you have a bunch of kids and dad says, don't make me pull over, and God help you if you did make him pull over. But he would straight up pull over on the side of the interstate. Things were about to not be pretty. Sometimes you just got a soda out of a cooler because you couldn't do that while driving, but most of the time it was not pretty. Tiago, you got your hand up. Go for it, my
friend. I just saw a comment from Lisa about revisit technical debt, and is this a fallacy or another decision point? Well, I think let me go back to Luke's comment, which I agree a lot about, all the external forces, right? The market and everything that is at play when building the roadmap. It's all about the intention, right? I can tell you that there are some situations where we need to intentionally absorb tech debt to pay off later, because there's no way out. That's what we need for to avoid churn, or to grow in the market space, or because this is a hot topic on the service side of the house to drive NPS up, right? So going back to one of the topics we were discussing earlier in Product Coffee, like a shameless plug to the metrics, right? Because we talked a lot about the leading and lagging indicators that will help you build that roadmap. I think that if you're not if you don't suffer from the shiny object syndrome, where everything that is cool and new you want to use, you are avoiding tech debt, like the tech debt that we know, right? We just have baked stuff and we go to the next thing, and then we just patch it up for the journey. But there are some situations where you need to be intentional to say, yeah, we know this is not optimal and we need to go this route and absorb some tech debt, and then have as part of your product plan to address it later, to pay it off, right? The tech debt is like using a credit card, right? You use it when you need it, but don't use it too much, so it's hard to pay it off later, right? So it really needs to be intentional. So that's my comment, Lisa, on your question on how, like, it's not a fallacy, but I think and again, like I'm a little salty this morning. I think it's the mushroom coffee, but like another hot take. Like I think we miss the point sometimes, right? And we mix up and conflate things. We don't pay attention. We don't have the right focus on addressing the item. So that's why I have the tech that the way we have. But if we are intentional about it, and if we treat it like a credit card, and you need to pay off your bills and you have to keep track of your balance statement, then put it on the plan and try to address it and try to avoid it whenever it's possible.
If you're taking notes, reminder, productcoffee.com/notes. Someone added in there that Tiago is suggesting that we all pay our credit card bills. New thoughts. And I love that. And I was just going to add, Tiago, you are always salty, just to be clear. I'm not sure that it's really something we can blame on Fungus Coffee, which I will insist on calling Fungus Coffee from this point
I was
forward.
wondering whether I should note that down into the notes, saying if Tiago is salty, it's probably because he had mushroom coffee that day.
Yeah. Try adding sugar, honey to the mushroom coffee.
I just thought he was Brazilian, and apparently there's a high salt content there. And I love it.
Yeah.
It's one of our favorite things. Sorry, Lisa, do you?
Yeah, you hit on exactly the discussion that I wanted. That was it. That was I appreciate you recognizing both sides of it, because I think it just ultimately comes down to a trade-off, and a mindful one of, sure, yeah, that is what we're creating, but we're doing that intentionally, and we know that that's what we're doing because there's a trade-off of what we're going to get right now. So I don't really need to say much more around it. You hit on the key points, and I think we can easily get pulled into this. Oh, yeah, it's creating technical debt, so we don't want to do that. So I appreciate you hitting both sides. That's it.
Awesome. I hate when someone has to sit there with their hand up. It feels awkward, like in class, right? But this is one of my favorite things in this group, is that great minds think alike. It's a statement, right? And it's that we all have very different perspectives and very different thoughts and are adding value to the conversation. But so often, so many of us have like a similar thing. And so, the thing I was going to say, something that, Devin already says, I'm like, I don't need to re-say it. He said it better and looked better doing it. So it's fine. Let it go. Dave, I'm just going to call you out, though, and say you've been strangely quiet today. I don't know what to make out of it. I'm really worried that you're not the real Dave. This is an AI takeover, preparing for next week.
I wish I could say I wasn't multitasking. I have some developers out in Eastern Europe that there's some things with the release today that we're working through. So sorry about being distracted.
Well, I want to give you a really big heart for joining Product Coffee, even though you have a release today. That's like award winning. So can I post that on the website? Testament to how awesome we are.
Yes, I think you guys are totally awesome. So yeah, and I had posted, or I put in the one Google Doc or the notes for this, like one of the better product roadmap. Like I think people struggle with like what a product roadmap is and what it isn't, and like how to like put together that effective one. So Jeff Lash's talk did a really good job, I think, around that. So if you haven't watched that ever, a lot of people have, but like that's one I definitely recommend. So Jeff is very involved. He's sort of like the Jason and Hallie of the St. Louis product community. So if you don't know Jeff, he's a good person to know. But that's a pretty awesome talk on product roadmaps.
Yeah, that's a great point. And thank you for sharing that, especially in the notes document. So we all have it. Appreciate that. Plug for everybody. And I just want to say, I know there's a conversation in the chat, about tools and all of that and tips and stuff. And I'm not in any way saying don't talk about that here and now, but just, a plug for the, the series, right? That this is our month on roadmaps. We're taking a little break out next week to talk about AIs and like how they're going to destroy all our roadmaps by, Skynet taking over and all of that. So all the power will probably go out in a minute now as Skynet gets wise to us. Fun fact, this actually happened at Product Camp Pittsburgh when Jason had a session on AI. The system got smart and it shut down the power of the building 5 times during his session and the elevators. So good times. But Randy, I know your hand's up, but just real quick, just the point of talking about the roadmap tools. The theme of the month is roadmaps. We'll be coming back to it after that session on AI, and we will have a workshop on roadmaps. So TBD on some more details of that and what we're going to do. Also, in the book club, we're reading that book. We're going to have an author Q&A. So just some more plugs for staying tuned to Product Coffee. Follow us on Eventbrite, follow us on social media, LinkedIn, all the things, right? Because we're always up to something, right? Hopefully fun stuff. But this month is going to be all about that. So definitely, I'm looking forward to the workshop and that author Q&A because I want to know what C. Todd and Bruce McCarthy have to share, on a personal level beyond what's in the book. And I'm really looking forward to the workshop, whether or not we can get them to help us with that, or, just even like this group and Jason really digging deep into tools and stuff around roadmaps. So I'm really excited about all of that, just to give that a plug. And sorry, Randy, over to you.
Yeah, I just want to make a quick mention back to the tech debt. As a developer, I had a situation where we were large project, General Motors, a lot of firsts, really the first non-proprietary network used in the automotive industry, basically writing it from a spec. But we found that the path we were going wasn't going to support. And so we as a development team without, and this isn't best practice, I'm not trying to advocate it as such, but without executive support, actually re-architected it. We knew that what we had, we couldn't stop because we had 30 some applications sitting around us needing to use something, but we re-architect and redevelop it in parallel. So, but at the same time, we were doing this internally. And my point is, I think you can approach technical debt because everybody wants to do their thing the right way. Product managers want to do their thing the right way. Developers want to do it the right way. Sales want to do it the right way in general. And I think if you leverage that mentality of doing it the right way, I think you can actually supercharge whatever people are doing. We basically did it in parallel, kind of under the radar. We took a major hit and we unveiled it, but then later on they sold it outside the company because it was a good price. And it was, we did it the right way the second time around. So again, I'm not saying there's a method to do it, but just consider that you can actually motivate people when you say, later on, we know this isn't the right way, but later on, we're going to try to do it the right way. And then they, in their, that time frame, kind of start building the, in their mind, et cetera, how to do it the right way. So again, I think, you're not doing it the right way the first time, but I think you can, leverage motivations. That's just just a comment.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point, Randy. And hey, a sign of success, right? If you build something that you can sell outside the company, definitely. I know as we're coming up top of the hour, we're going to start to lose people. So I just want to jump in, we'll continue on the topic. And remind everybody that, next week, not only have the session on Wednesday on AI and book club, as usual on Friday, just like we have this Friday, but we actually have a happy hour for those in the Atlanta community. And we went through and did some intros, and a lot of us are based around the Atlanta area somewhere. So just a reminder that we do have a happy hour on the 20th. So hit up productcoffee.com/events. That is always your go-to place to see what's coming, what's next. And the homepage will also tell you like what's the next session usually, and book club, and the next happy hour. But
on that product happy hour, Metro Atlanta is so big that we draw people from Carolinas and everywhere. So keep that in mind for the folks that are in Metro, quote unquote, Metro Atlanta.
That's a great point. Yes, Metro Atlanta is getting that big. It is sucking in other states. So if you're in North Florida, South Carolina, all the way up to Charlotte, you should probably consider yourself just part of the Metro Atlanta area, because we're coming for you.
South
Birmingham.
Birmingham.
Yeah, Birmingham as well. Yeah, all the adjacency.
Totally. Love it. Thank you. Good point. And if you're somewhere else, you are totally welcome as well. We just didn't want to rub it in that we were having a happy hour, but you're always welcome to join us. I know in May we have a Product Coffee member who's not able to be here today, but it's part of the core crew, Matt Bettina, who lives in New Orleans, and he's planning to be here for the May one. So, if you have opinions and will travel and like a drink while you're doing it, then, join us for a happy hour. All right, so back over to the regularly scheduled topic at hand, but just wanted to remind everybody that we had that coming up. Manesh, is your hand still up?
Oh, sorry, my apologies.
Well, the real Slim Shady, please stand up, right? So I think that there was a lot of, just great discussion on that roadmap topic. I appreciate, so many good points that were being made there. For me, I think, I learned a lot. I got to go look up Shape Up and understand that a little bit more. And thank you, Devin, for kind of bringing that to the group as top of mind. And I think it just reminds, right, Lisa and others all hit on those such good points around the communication, right? And Somia had a lot of good points there around communicating up front as you're planning and making sure we're incorporating all the right inputs into that plan, because otherwise we have a roadmap, that's tied to a vision that maybe is misaligned to a mission, or not everyone's on board with what the vision and the mission are. And so, we're trying to plan this trip to, Disney World, and it turns out nobody wants to go to Disney World, right? that does feel like something that resonates with a product manager's life. And, it's really important to make sure we're understanding those goals and then communicating along the way. I loved, the conversation of, and talk about what's needed so that people can pack. And I think we forget that sometimes in product management as well. And I was laughing in my head thinking about the, a trip I took once where, at that point was swimsuits. It was not clear. So you end up with all these added stops, because then we got to stop and buy, a swimsuit, but this person can't get a swimsuit at the same store that the other person can get a swimsuit at. And you're like, on these like epic shopping trips are, to me, are nightmares. I was like, please, can you just wear your underwear? Like, why is that not a thing? Like, I'm so done with this. But right, that communication all along the way is just so critical. Making sure everyone knows what they need. I've experienced that on the development side where, we didn't effectively communicate, and then it was almost like a tool thing. We needed to have some knowledge and certain capabilities to do a thing that was on the roadmap, but we didn't communicate that effectively up front. They didn't understand when we were talking about these words on the roadmap that was going to be the dependencies. And it was like, okay, this all has to change because we need a couple of months for us to dig in and learn that technology set to deliver those capabilities and do that thing, right? So it really, all does kind of like tie together in a way that I'm finding really, really compelling this morning.
Great theme, Haley.
Thank you. I appreciate that. This is therapy, like Lisa said, but for me, this is also often like, not to wax religious on anyone on a live stream, but in my church, I often feel like I come to this and I just feel like there's so many things that people said that just like really resonate. I just feel compelled. I'm like, wow, compelled sometimes by how wrong I've done things in the past, how badly I've thought about things, and how much I need to change.
Well, let me share my since we're on the roadmap analogy and the travel is, when we were diaper training my one daughter, we just got started on the trip from Indiana to Kansas City, 10-hour drive. And we're like about, 2 hours into it, just starting to make some time. And my one daughter, who, is in a diaper or potty training, but still in a diaper, says, I have to go to the bathroom. And we're like, but you got a diaper on, last week you were peeing in the diaper, just pee in the diaper. My dad, it was like thinking back to, I think it was Lucas, there's other things there's other objectives, and yeah, the roadmap is the main one, but again, there's other things, other inputs that say, hey, these are other goals and objectives. Our goal in that instance was to potty train this person to where she wouldn't have a diaper. So again, you're like, although your immediate objective seemed to be to get to Kansas City, it was also to support these other objectives. So I don't know, that story came to mind when you just used the analogy, and then with Luke's comment.
My wife and I have made the same call before. It's like, hey, you got a diaper on.
Randy, that's equating to PCI compliance. That's equating to HIPAA compliance. That's equating to SOX compliance. Your objective is one thing, but you've got to comply with these other scenarios or things of that nature.
Oh, yeah.
So a great analogy on that. I love it.
Awesome. We're down to just the last little bit. I want to kick it to Anna and give you a chance just to give us some final thoughts. Tie it together with a pretty bow for me, because I need that right now. Oh, you're on mute.
Yep, got to go off mute. That's the hard part, right? Yeah, I mean, roadmaps I think are so critical to knowing where we're going, but also when I think of roadmaps and where I see my team struggling a bit is the timing. So when I think of roadmaps, I think that we need to think about the timing and the market and the your sales cycle and things like that. And I feel like that's often overlooked when we're building out roadmaps. So that's where I spend a lot of my coaching time with my team. But ownership over roadmaps, and I think also like making sure your company or your stakeholders are aware of them is key. But I've loved this conversation. I'm not great at speaking up throughout the thing because I know there's just always so many hands in the air, but I'm always kind of a little bit of a lurker and listening. But I think roadmaps are key, and it's great that we're talking about them today. So thanks everyone for the conversation.
Thanks, Anna. Always appreciate it. You're the best of lurkers that then have those key pieces of wisdom, not just random people outside my window. So yeah. That's always creepy. Why is there someone in my lawn?
Okay, that's weird.
I will shut down the live stream if I can figure out how to do that.